Welcome back to Through the Veil. I'm Camille.
I'm Elle.
Today we have Dee Dee with us, Deanna Hampton or Dee Dee. Um, I met Dee Dee through a Facebook group, right? About
Yes,
after life after death.
yes.
Oh
About a
yes,
month
that's
ago.
right. And we did a
Was it
session
only a
together.
month?
I
Yeah, only a
know.
month. It
It
feels like
feels
it
like
was
it's
longer than
been
that.
3 or
It
something.
know, right?
Yeah, we
just
had a
blew my
session
mind.
together. We discovered we had a lot in common. We kept in touch, and because Dee Dee has a lot of these same gifts that we highlight on the podcast, we invited her to come on and be a guest. So here we are.
Oh, thanks, ladies. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, and to kind of just coattail off what Camille said, I was in a Facebook group and Camille was doing something. I don't know if she was doing a live or I can't really recall. But all of a sudden, I was just like, oh my gosh, I feel this deep connection with her. So she doesn't know it, but I latched onto her. She didn't, not in a creepy way, but I was like, this is my person. Like she's meant to be part of my tribe. And I just felt like it was not a coincidence.
Mm-mm. No, definitely not. And then we discovered we had some things in common. And it was just, yeah, it made a lot of sense that we would connect. So, and then we asked Dee Dee to be on here because, well, during our session, and I know Els had a session with her as well, it's just like you have these gifts, and I wouldn't say that they were like latent, but you were using them, but not maybe the way you wanted to be using them, or you hadn't maybe felt fully comfortable saying, okay, I'm going to start, I have these gifts and they're fine, they're God given, that kind of thing.
I hadn't fully Yeah, explored so
Mm-hmm.
them yet.
Mm-hmm.
that's a great question. And so I'll kind of back it up a little bit. So I've always had something since I was a little kid, right? But I didn't know what it was. And the first thing I recall being able to do was look across the room, see an object, and will it to come to me without me having to go get it, right? So my mom walked in one day and saw that, and she said, "Stop that." And I was like, "Oh, what?" I felt like I was doing something wrong. And to this day, I've never done it again. But the funny thing is, my mom also had a gift. And based on our faith background, it was kind of taboo to even acknowledge it. So only really members of my immediate family, my siblings and I knew about it. She told me not to practice witchcraft in the house. I'm sick. I don't even know what witchcraft is.
You're like, I'm just trying to clean my room with efficiency, Mom. That's all I'm
Well,
trying to do here.
exactly. Oh my goodness. And then she told me that I was never to do it again. And so I'm still obeying her to this day. So, A and she's not
long-lasting house
bad.
rule.
Yes. I didn't really think much of it in my teens. I kind of stopped right then and there. Any thoughts of anything. And fast forward to my teens, and I'm riding in a car with somebody, and we're going down this really windy mountain. All of a sudden, I said, "Stop, stop." And had we not stopped in that very moment, we would have gone into a head-on collision that already existed, that the car was up in flames. And so something just told me stop. So then I'm in my 20s and I start learning about chakras and the energy fields and what that means, and how each emotion is connected to an unresolved physical issue and how our bodies, when they're all of those energies come together, it's what creates our aura, our energy field. So I learned about that, and then I started doing massage. And as I was learning to do massage, I realized, like, how before I even put my hands on somebody, I am picking up immediately what is going on. And that put me in a little bit of a predicament because they didn't ask for the information.
Oh, ethics.
I know, right? But the reason I say that is sometimes I was even picking up on sexual abuse and unresolved trauma from that. And that either may have been a repressed memory for somebody or just a shameful memory. And I didn't want to violate that. So then I was like, oh, now great. I got to stop doing this too because I don't know what to do with it. So I had all of this learned knowledge and I still what do I do? So I just kind of pushed it away and I suppressed it. I lived in Long Beach, California, and two of my roommates were of our same faith background. And I definitely wasn't going to let anything there come out. So because again, it was that fear of I'm evil or I'm not of the light or of the goodness. And again, I don't know what to do with this, so I'll do nothing with this. And I have intuition, but I can't pick up anything for myself. I mean, I
That's not
just,
uncommon.
yeah, no, I mean, I'd already be wealthy if that was the case. So I'd have already won the lottery by now.
Multiple times.
Right. So then I met Camille, and I'm not even talking. And then I met Elle, like some kind of simultaneously. And all of a sudden, it is like I put a key in a door, and it unlocked something in me.
Mm.
It just came pouring back, and nothing has worked for me professionally for the last year. Nothing. And it came to me that it wasn't supposed to, or I wouldn't do this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my story. And since then, in the last 30 days, I have just opened up to the world. And it takes a lot of courage to say, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm a medium, because people immediately think you're kookaloo, right? Or that I go to state fairs and I've got tarot cards laid out and, crystal ball. No, no. So like, and I'm very transparent. I did a live reading the other night and I let people know that everything I do is of God and it's a God-given gift. And I pray for protection for us both, that we're both in the light and that no darkness comes through. So, putting that out there for all my friends and my faith friends. I keep checking to see if they've unfriended me yet.
Does Facebook notify you when people unfriend you?
I don't know, but I
I should
just
be
know if
aware of that.
I'm aware of a couple people that I'm probably like, oh, great. We are probably broken up.
What a story of courage with that, Dee Dee. One of the hardest things I think to come to grips with something like this is that it's part of who you are and that it's okay. Because of that, we've talked a bit about like religious trauma around it before. And like throughout all Christianity, pretty non-denominational, it's something that a lot of people don't understand.
Mhm,
And that fear breeds kind of like the this is wrong sentiment behind it, I think, more than most anything else. And so it's really hard to step into that and overcome that fear and to see that you're actually really stepping into light.
mhm.
Like there's so much good that comes of this too, and so much connection and so much God. There's
Yeah,
God in it.
absolutely. And I think that connecting with you and Camille helped me to really accept that faith background doesn't have to be the forefront of my thoughts. It doesn't have to be what holds me back. And some of the things I did readings with both of you, and my parents came through, and I'll just put this out there. My mom told me to feed the missionaries, which are part of our faith
Oh, it
background,
was,
right?
she was playing a practical joke on us. Do you
I
remember?
swear
So
to you.
It was
obvious.
so funny because we had discovered our similar faith background at this point yet. We had, because I had the feeling to ask you. I said, connecting to your mom, and I said, does your mom come from a traditional Christian faith background or conservative Christian faith background? And you
Hmm.
said, well, yeah. And I was like, okay. And then we discovered our similarity there. And then your question for mom was, I'm in this rut with work. I don't know what to do. And so she played a little joke on us where she like kind of gave us a little roundabout answer and she was just messing around. And then she actually got serious about, use your gifts. It's okay to use your gifts. But before that, she was joking around.
Yeah, and she was the one who kind of made me think to suppress those gifts.
Well, it was hilarious though, because we were asking about your work, and then she was like, and then I had the thought about church, and I was like, well, maybe do you have friends from church that maybe you could network? Because any job, like what kind of work do you want to do? Talk to your friends from church, and you're like, yeah, maybe. And then I was like, she wants you to feed the missionaries. What does this have to do with anything?
Out of the blue. And I'm like, Mom, I didn't do it when you were alive. I'm not doing it now. No. And I'm like arguing with my mom through Camille. Fast forward a couple days because I'm like, no, I'm not feeding it. It's not happening. And I am in Walmart and I see the missionaries and they're buying groceries. And it comes to me, feed the missionaries. I'm like, okay, I got you, Mom. So I paid for their groceries. I was like, you didn't say I had to cook for the missionaries. I just fed them.
I just fed them
Still
for a
finding
week, Mom.
loopholes.
I fed them for a week.
I know. So it's since I've been open to these things, I've also just kind of, like I said, the floodgates have opened. And I do believe I have this to help other people and to heal other people, whatever that means. But the thing is, too, is that fine boundary of, does somebody really want to know?
Right.
Do you want to know? I would love your perspective on that, ladies.
Ethically, it's one of those things. This is why control is really important. And Dee Dee's taking my class this next semester, so we're going to be doing all kinds of fun development and stuff with this. But we'll go over all the ethics because they're a huge part of any intuitive gift. And oftentimes, when you haven't developed control yet over like your on and off switch,
Hmm.
with any intuitive gift, including spirit communication, things are just going to come in. And
Hmm.
especially when things function intuitively, because what you're doing is you're coming into the contact with their energy field, their aura. You can even call it the information field that's around us,
Hmm.
quantumly. Hashtag quantum physics episode with Doug. When you come in contact with that, because you're sensitive to it, you're going to start picking up information. And some of that information might be interesting. Some of that information might be uncomfortable. Some of that information might be like, okay, what do I do with this now? And the answer was nothing because it's not yours. It's not
Yeah.
yours
Yeah.
because it's theirs. It's like if you overheard a conversation with someone, unless they're terrorists, it doesn't matter if they're having an affair with their,
Hmm.
best friend's wife because it's not yours. It might be
Right.
wrong, but it's not anything that you can step in on unless it's something that you need to step in on. But even then, it gets a little bit sketchy, like you talked about with sexual abuse. Maybe it was something that happened in the past, and maybe you don't pick up on that. Maybe it just seems like it's sometimes in the energy, it's present, right? It's just here because it
Yeah.
did happen, so it's here. And so you might not know when. It might be something that they are struggling with or dealing with, or maybe haven't even had the bravery to do that yet.
Hmm.
Or it might be something that's ongoing. And I say case by case basis, it's really important to kind of, I would call it leaning into the spirit, leaning into the Holy Ghost, the spirit, capital T, capital S, with discernment on what to do with that. Most of the time, probably you should leave this information be. If you feel really, really nudged to bring it up, then maybe very cautiously, only with that person, approach it. I wouldn't necessarily take this information anywhere else first because it again, it's like knowing someone's secret, right? It's like
Yeah.
they didn't, and it's not even a secret that they were willing to share with you.
Right.
It's just a secret
Right.
you picked up on.
Yeah.
So ethically, it is a boundary, even though you know
Hmm.
this information. It's not your information to give to anybody
Right.
Well,
else.
I think if you're in a session, I did a session with somebody once, and I know I've watched Elle in a session do this as well. We were like doing a group thing where somebody was talking about conflict with dad. They wanted to talk about their relationship with their dad and they wanted to connect to dad. And there was this feeling I had like, was there sexual abuse? And she said, yeah, I think there was. And that's something I've kind of been, dealing with and wondering for a long time. And I was like, okay, I'm picking up on that. And I know that happened with Elle as well. So if they're
Yeah, it
kind of
happens
asking
more than often than
questions and you feel like it's appropriate, but let's say you're not in a session. One time, this was about maybe 2 years ago. I'm at the pickleball courts, and it's just like a open play social situation, right? And at this point, I was taking Elle's class. I was taking her class to connect to my son better on the other side, my son Wesley, right? And we were focusing mostly on spirit communication, not like picking up on the information field or people's energies, or like that would be considered the psychic or the connecting with the energy of the living, right? So I have this friend. She came off the courts, and we were just talking, and I was like, how's it going? How are you doing? And she's like, honestly, and she's like, she's like, just let's just talk for a second. And so she started opening up to me about some struggles in her marriage. And because she was opening the door to talk about that, I didn't even realize at the time, but I was really keenly picking up on issues. I'm like, is it like this? And she's like, yes. How did you know? And I'm like, is it because of the way that he was raised, his mom, and he's the youngest and he can do no wrong kind of thing? She's like, yes. How did you know? I'm like, I don't know. I just like pick up on stuff. And so she sent me a text later and we talked about it for like 15 minutes. And she said, that was so extremely helpful. Thank you so much for supporting me and listening to me. And later I realized I'm like, she didn't give me the information that I was picking up. It was just sort of available and I was piecing it together. And
Yeah.
when she asked me how I was doing, I was like, I don't know. I just get a sense for these things, which was accurate and true. But because we were engaged in this conversation, I wasn't overstepping. You know what I mean? We were
Hmm.
like,
right.
it was appropriate. I wasn't like, I'm a psychic and I'm going to give you a reading right now on the spot. Hopefully that's okay. You know, I was picking up on her intonation and her body language, but I was also picking up on just kind of like common sense. Like, if he's the youngest in the family and he's a mama's boy and he can do no wrong, he may continue having that mindset in his marriage. Like, I can do no wrong, you know, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
no
And like,
consequences.
my background's in psychology and sociology. So I'm just kind of piecing everything together. And it was a helpful conversation for her. So that's great. But, it would have been a different story had I noticed something was wrong with her and been like, what's wrong with, open up to me. And then I started like
Yeah.
forcing this information on her.
Right.
I found this was another thing that pushed me back was a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I got a message for somebody that was like somebody I grew up with, hadn't seen him in a long time. And I'm thinking I'm Teresa Caputo. And I call her, I'm like, yeah, your parents want me to tell you such and such. She flipped out. Like, you're evil. How could you do that? And I'm like, oh, danger, abort, abort. And I just, okay, we'll put that back down again. Let's not do that. So I realized permission is so critically important.
Yeah.
And I don't get that usually during a reading where that comes up. It's usually when I'm doing body work with somebody. During a reading, I feel like for me, and I can't speak for you guys, but sort of off the earthly plane. I go somewhere else and it just, whatever's happening is just coming out of my mouth. How does that work for you two?
We call
Like,
that one of my original mentors called that spirit vomit.
great.
Like, that is when your claircognizance is in full form and function, and it's just like a channel. You're like
Yeah.
you are the faucet, and it is just dumping, right? So
Yeah.
when you're really in the flow of the connection, that's not uncommon. And it's like, I don't even remember what I just said. Like, what just happened? It's just so
Yes.
quick
And
coming through.
yeah, and if I finish with somebody and I don't, I'm still learning how to do this, is to ground myself because otherwise I am walking around in this
Yeah.
frenetic
You're like
energy.
in a cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like this electric shock I don't know
Right.
what to do with. And so I'm working on learning how to do that better for my own sanity. But God has given me this incredible gift. And that is after a reading, he erases it from my memory. Like I do
Mhm.
not recall what we talked about.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
just can't carry all that around with me. I mean, I may remember a tidbit here or there, but I'll talk to people and they're like, you remember when you told me such and such? I'm like, no, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
That that is actually not uncommon either. A lot of people who work with spirit will find that. And it is because you have that ability to jump right into the flow. So when you aren't filtering absolutely anything, you're not thinking about it, right? It's not even
Right.
conscious. You're just
Flowing.
relaying directly what you receive. And so it's not like being retained. Your brain isn't like processing the information. It just goes right out. And so a lot of people, especially people who really get comfortable working with spirit, will find that, "Oh, I don't remember what happened. Tell me what happened."
Yeah.
I
Remind
was
me what
just a
we talk
conduit.
about.
I was the connector piece. I don't remember any of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've had a similar gift with ever since I was a child. Adults, even, or other children, like peers, would dump their like big, deepest, darkest secrets on me. So adults would kind of like vent to me about, stuff, but kids would tell me like the scary stuff and the traumas and everything. And I have this same ability where it just gets erased. I mean, I know people have told me stuff, and I've joked with people that I'm a vault because I literally just won't remember it later. I have a close friend who told me a scary story, something happened with like some violence in the home. She told me about it and it was so like, oh, so like shocking and sad. And then later I forgot about it. And then she told me the story again just in the last couple months. And I was like, oh, I've heard this story before. But my memory just like, it just got erased. Because when she told me the first time, I was a teenager and it was just too heavy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what am I supposed to do? I don't know. As a teenager, should I call CPS over something like this? I don't know. I don't know
Right.
what to
Right.
do.
What
I'm
am I
not
supposed to do with this?
equipped to help
Yeah.
you. And so, yeah, it's really interesting.
That brings up a really interesting connection too, especially doing this work. And it kind of falls back onto the whole kind of theme of what we've been talking about is like when you're working with someone in a more professional capacity, but even not, even like Camille was with her friend a couple of whenever that was, where, she was confiding in you and you were having this healing conversation, feeling that kind of empathy that you were showing her in that circumstance of like being able to intuitively understand and interpret the background of what was going on can be cathartic in so many different ways. It can be helpful when you're using this in a more professional capacity, like we are with working with people, having sessions, having readings, any kind, whether it's spirit communication or the body work or the energy work and things like that. You kind of have to remember your job is only to function so far as you function, right? You stay within your limitation of your box. You're the healer for this person right now,
Mhm.
not anything else out of the room.
Yeah.
Like that is still their business. That is still their business to heal. They have to take it the step further to do anything beyond that. You are giving them an open door, a capacity to that healing. You're offering them that peace, that respite, that capacity. But then anything else that comes beyond that is their choice that they have to pursue themselves. They have to do the work, right? Just like therapy, just like anything else, they have to do the work to make it stick, to make it really hold, and to have that full form healing occur. It's not
Hmm.
you,
Yeah. So
They
to not
always
get
say
too
that.
invested. Yeah.
They always say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
right?
And
I like that.
sometimes just by having the thought or the question, it means you're ready. You
Hmm.
may not be ready to go deep into the work yet, but you're ready to start peeling back the layers.
Hmm.
It's time
Right.
to start. And it always usually starts with even ourselves. Everything starts with a question.
It also ends with ourselves.
Yeah,
Like
starts and
we
ends.
can do the work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting just talking about spiritual gifts that people can use in different professions. My therapist, we just moved back to Utah after being gone for a year. And I had my first session with her since we were back. She's great. I love her. I've referred her to so many people, including my friend Pickleball, who's talking to me about her marital issues. I was like, oh, you got to go see her. So I went to go see her. And it's funny because I had finally told one of my very best friends about my spiritual gifts and that I use them to help other people. And she was totally cool about it. But like she and I both go to the same therapist because I introduced her to this therapist as well. And we were talking about people that have spiritual gifts in their jobs. And she's like, well, she has to be somewhat psychic because I'll tell you what, I go in there, she picks up on everything like very quickly. She remembers it all. It's like she just has access to this information that I don't know how she knows it. And I told her, so I went in there last week and I was like, me and so, we think that you're psychic a little bit. We know you have this capacity. And she's like, that's so funny. She's like, I never would have thought of it like that. She's like, but I do have like, yeah, she's like, I do pick up on things really, really easily and make connections. And it was just funny because she never takes notes and she remembers things and she just has this knack for everything clicks quickly with her and she just knows what to do with it. It's really, really uncanny. I think there's a lot of professionals that use spiritual gifts that maybe wouldn't consider it to be so, like teachers. They have the gift of knowledge. They can process it quickly. They can help other people process it as well. I think a lot of even like artists, Elle does visual arts. And like, do you ever feel like you're channeling anything when you're, I don't know, like your creativity or something?
Yeah, sometimes you feel like you can. I'm more of like a realist in my art. I am not real interpretive because I like the technique. That's my structure brain. I'm like, I want it to be specific and direct, and I want the technique there. But you feel like you're channeling the spirit of the rock or the tree or the person, right? If you're doing portraiture or something. So you do kind of have to like zone in and connect with it in the flow of a moment. And I think anybody who does anything creative, like I have a lot of creative capacities. I write, I bake, I do all the visual arts, like I do a lot. And even people who do physical things like dance, there's just some kind of mode that you slip into where you
Mhm.
are kind of like channeling that creativity, where you like lose time and space. You're just like in it.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely is accessing something bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes a problem when you're singing in front of an audience and you lose time and space and then you're like, "Oh no, I lost where I was in my song."
Yeah, that's
That
never
But I
happened to
was
happens.
me,
in it.
Neil.
That happens to me.
I'm not allowed to sing on the outside, according to everybody that loves me.
Oh, darn it.
Sing on the inside.
Your private spaces. Spiritual gifts are something that they're given to everybody, and
Mhm.
often we either underutilize them or don't pin down what they are. And sometimes we don't need to, as long as we're using them because they're given for us to use to benefit ourselves and other people.
I like the
Yeah.
term spiritual gift because when I embraced that term, or it's when I embraced my gifts.
It's beautiful symbolism because it's something that you've been given. You know, a gift is something given freely. You've been given a gift, and then you go give that gift, you share that gift too with someone else.
Yeah.
When you give a gift, it's out of love, it's out of generosity, it's out of charity, and it doesn't take away from you to give the gift. You give it, you know,
It
willingly,
refills
freely.
me, actually. I
Exactly.
feel
Yeah.
like I'm living my purpose.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast yet, but there's this near-death experience book that I read early on in my near-death experience, like studying, and it talks about somebody who passed away. Well, and they had this experience where they went to this like huge, like building, kind of like a warehouse, and they had this spiritual guide that was showing them all these different parts of the other side. And in this warehouse, there were all these beautifully wrapped presents and tons, like thousands of them in this warehouse on shelves. The guy pulls out one of the gifts and he says, "What is this?" And the guide said, "These are the gifts that you haven't asked for that God wants to give you." And it wasn't just you, like him personally, it was like kind of collectively the world, you know? And they were so
Wow.
beautifully wrapped, and they that just symbolized the importance and the value of them on the inside. It kind of is that quote. There's a LDS historian named Kate Holbrook, passed of cancer a couple of years ago, but her quote that I love is, "God is waiting for you to ask the question so that he can give you that personal revelation that you're seeking." There's so many gifts, I think, at our disposal. We don't want to ask for too much. We want to just be grateful for what we have, but that doesn't really play into that whole like allegory in the Bible about the talents and being buried, or, you know, that sort of thing. Like we're supposed to increase and glorify God while we're doing it. It's not, they're not gifts that come from us. They're gifts that are being shared with us, like Elle said, to share with others.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us today, Dee Dee. I think it's been amazing to see how, you know, that acceptance really can play a huge part into someone's life and fill their life with light and kind of turn everything around. These kind of stories are things people need to hear because there's so many people still kind of living in a place with fear around gifts that they have. So, do you have any way people can contact you, Dee Dee, with what you're doing?
Yes, so I do have a booking link, but I can also put my email address out there because I'm able to book that way too. It's Deanna, Deanna, Hampton, Hampton 13 @gmail.com. And I just want to tell you what a gift it has been for me to spend time with both of you. It's been a lot of fun too. And I would just encourage everybody to not hide your light.
We're giving it to glow, right?
Right. Glow on, girls, glow on.
Whoa. We can be reached through our email on the website, which also has all of our biographies and all the things. And that website is
throughtheveiledpodcast.com. We need to
Site,
plug
so
Elle's upcoming semester class. So it's an intensive, it's 2 hours a week. It's an 8-week course, or is it 10 weeks?
it's 8 weeks.
8 weeks. It's from August to October. She still has
October.
a few slots left. So if you're interested, jump on it, because once it's full, it's full.
Right. And you can reach us through the email for that, and I
Mhm.
can provide you all the information, and questions about the course are also welcome. You'll see Dee Dee there.
always improving.
And as always, if you would like to book a reading or have any other questions, comments for the podcast, please get in contact with us. If you would like to be a guest and share your story like Dee Dee, get in contact with us. And otherwise, we appreciate your comments and anything on the podcast platforms, on the YouTube, and we will see you next time.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.